as an activist and in the job I have as a chair of the older people's organisation, that's the Barnet 55 Plus Forum, I inevitably and quite willingly take part in a host of things, you know, where it's required to say things and do things on behalf of older people. You know, just part of the course kind of thing in a way. Yeah. Yes, I do in that sense.
What have you? Are there any examples of maybe like injustice or anything like that you could?
Well, in an individual sense, no, I don't. They're not like most councils. They don't set out to be deliberately evil or nasty to people per se. And in that sense, it's always about policies and the impact that it has upon people generally, and how it would hit some people a bit more than others. For instance, I'm in an area where, let me just say first that Barnet, you see, like all councils, but Barnet is noted for it being a relatively wealthy borough. But within the borough, there's the left and the right. And by that I mean the wealthy and the not so wealthy. They're two quite distinct areas. Like this is the west area, and this area you've got tend to have the poorer elements and larger number of certain types of immigrants, you know, who have difficulties and so on. Not all the immigrants and people in that sense are over here, but there's a large number, and that sort of gives the area less of a wealthy element to it, and that of course people experience all the results of that. You know, you often get what you pay for. And sometimes, in circumstances up until recently, you can say that that's the way it's been kind of quite definitely, but I think these days that what you might call the middle classes, and therefore more people a bit more wealthy, are beginning to feel uneasy. Some of them are feeling a pinch. Already, in the sense that, and the more the recession and bad times dig deep, the more they begin to feel it in a way that hasn't been there for many years. Yeah. We're now going through, for some people, we're going through times akin to what they used to be in my very early days as a younger person.
What about how some of the policies affect some of the less fortunate?
Well, you take the question of the day centres. One of the things we argue for, is, you know, on behalf of older people, is that it's not only one goes into the health service or to hospitals and what have you in that sense to have medicine, to be treated in whatever way, but there is such a thing as prevention and a sense of well-being, and that requires facilities for people. And so when the day centres are cut back with a third, something like a 30% slice, I think, as was a few years ago when they started drawing in on their expenditure, which incidentally coincided at the time with the period when they'd invested in the Iceland thing and subsequently lost it. So all in all, you know, the position on the money has hit the boroughs harder, and it's hard to say whether our share of that is worse than anybody else. But when a person is on low rates of income, inevitably when further cuts are made in the outside services, I mean, in their internal income and arrangements, that's one thing on its own. You know, if the pension loses its value, that means they've got to find ways of economising themselves. That is bad enough in itself. But if they've had the facility of going out to I'm talking about any individual now, if they had the facility of going to a day centre, having a lunch, cheap lunch, having a game of bingo or doing whatever that they do, well, that becomes hard, you know. If they knock a day off the week for that, that's you feel it, you know. People want to get out. That's what well-being's all about. It's about people's mobility, you know.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's that's important. Is there anything else you can think of?
Well, along that line, there are issues. I mean, I go to the local pensioners and individuals there, and I do too, because I do my own shopping. But we talk about the price of things. So not only are the value of the pension, which itself is going up by small amounts, just like wages are, but going up by small amounts, and you're already on a lower level of income by the very nature of being a pensioner. But if you then go to the shops and you find, for instance, the price of a loaf of bread is quite extortionate compared to what it was just a year, 2 years ago, then the price of fuel is absolutely astonishing, you know. Now there may be good reason for that in the world at large, you know, the price of oil going up and so on. Although I think the fuel companies and the energy companies have really had us on over a long time, to be honest. And what they take away when the good times, they never put it back. They will give it back to you, and things of that sort. I'm saying that people on low income, and by definition, the pension is on low income. So, and if you're a poor pensioner, in other words, you've got nothing in the bank or very little in the bank from the wealthier people might have or will have, then of course you proportionately you suffer more, which is a strange thing. So this phrase that we're all in it together, we may be, but not to the same degree.
Yeah.
That's the point, you see. That's that unequalness. So I personally sense that all the time, you know, around me. We live with things like that all the time. We're not alone in this country, of course, but in the wealthy borough, you can feel it just the same. That's the point, you know. So that's that sort of thing. Then for those who use some of the other facilities, libraries in some areas, not in this area, we haven't had a library closed, but libraries are being closed in the borough, over in the Finchley side, and there's a local fight on for their own libraries. I would say at the moment we can't say that the health services that we receive, again I'm talking basically for older people, have been seriously hit. One we do know, because and when we're discussing, as you asked whether I'm in touch, I talk with council people, well we also talk with NHS people, because we talk about the policies, you know, of the NHS and the health services and so on. And every document, and some of them are quite big, fat wads of paper, there's a kind of standard format that says we must work within the finances that we have. And then a bit later, but in the same context, and we've got to find cuts in the order of, I think, overall it's 20 billion pounds, you know. So we've all got to take our share of the cuts. So there's that sort of thing. That's extremely worrying, because we begin to feel it and see it happen I mean, we know, for instance, that some treatments are being rationed. They may touch the... And rationing is a peculiar thing. It's not like having a ration book and tearing off a coupon like we used to do in the war, you know, like I did. I'm old enough for that. But it is, if you're due for an operation which would be in, say, a year or two ago, they could have said about another 6 to 8 weeks' time. If that becomes 13 weeks, a quarter of a year, that's a rationing, by any standards in my view, but it's not described as such. So that's not meeting their targets.
Right.
Yeah, it's some crafty stuff going on.
Yeah, double speak.
Yeah. So that's going on, and it's going on in the area. Yeah, we know that. You know, it's people say certain things, and you say, well, that's a bit of a change. There's no the drama of the 30s is not with us. You know, that awful drama stuff of people really on the poverty line. You know, you don't get that sort of thing. And but you do. But the issue is very much there. What else can I say? You know, that's life as it is at the moment for us. It's gloomy. It's absolutely bloody gloomy.
Yeah.
And of course, me coming from my background and trade union background and so on, I can see the unfairness of it in sharper terms than some people might. You know, most people just want to get on with their lives. You know, begin to feel there's something not right. You know, some of them, and then begin to ask questions which, in my view, should have asked years ago. But I see the unfairness of it in sharper terms and in political terms as well. You know, in the left-right sense. You know. And I just feel that the bankers have got away, are still getting away with the 5-card trick. Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's impossible to soften their image on this one. I don't think I've ever seen such outrage in the way that that level of operations in society, you know, where all the big time decisions on economic and finance, where there's such ruthless, inconsiderate decision taking in the terms of the way the economy is run. Greed doesn't come into it really. There's a kind of willful arrogance about it which I find appalling.
Yeah. Well, all right. Is that it? I mean that.
Well, it's there's any particular questions. That's the way I view things at the moment. As far as the council is concerned, I hesitate to get into the party politics of things, but inevitably it's true. I mean, I do see that, and I could put names, but I'm not going to, of some councillors who I feel are probably hidebound in the sense of their ideological approach on it, who are willfully, I would say, happy to sell off, in the way it's happened, anyway, sell off the NHS to privatise, to privatise the NHS. It's they're working to a strategy which has been going a long time. I mean, it's not really new in the sense that the beginnings of some of this movement toward private ownership of NHS or health provision has been going on since the 80s, possibly the 70s, was reached a new height in the last government's reign, led by Tony Blair, but Tony Blair and others, it wasn't just one person, it was a number of others, and it was done on, I think, to some extent economically, because they thought, oh, this is the way, our system has won in the battle of ideas, but it hasn't. That's the point, it hasn't. And I personally, and I cannot talk about Barnet without bringing in the broader concept. I mean, and I do feel that the people up at St Paul's and the youngsters who are losing the most, in my view, they're losing not only what they got today, you know, they haven't got too much because they haven't been born, they haven't been around, you know, but they're losing the future as well. And that's one thing we never had that feeling, you know. we were born into an awful system, and we might have had strong ideas as we got older about the unfairness of it, but there came a moment, you see, when we truly were all in it together. That was a wartime, and we came out of the war with a sense that things are going to be better, and they were. And we had those better times. Truly had them in a way. But this is something where things are being taken from people who have been used to a better time than we had, and they're losing that.
Yeah.
And they feel aggrieved in a way that I think they feel aggrieved in a way that even we didn't. I did as an individual when I became aware of politics, but today I sense that in a broader way people are saying this is not right, and that's what the St Paul's people are cultivating without necessarily all of them being aware of the impact they're making, but they're just saying enough's enough, you know. And that to me, and they're not actually saying it in the way we said it. It's so utterly genuine, you know. That's what I like about it. No politics associated with it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. In that sense, it's great. It's a pity we got to this pass, but it's good that there are people that feel in that way and are acting on it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, as far as Barnet is concerned, as I say, all boroughs share the basics of what I've been talking about. But Barnet has also got a factor to it which is a bit different from others. It has, if you like, it's because of maybe because of its association with a wealthier element, and there are other reasons beside, I think. But rather, it's an in-depth sort of thing to go into as to why they are, but they are more ideologically driven than many other boroughs. That's the point I'm really making. In other words, as far as this government is concerned, they are kind of top of the class, you know, with the lower level of government. They're a borough that I suppose are seen as, you know, that deserves a pat on the head for some things, or sometimes one or two of them go a bit over the top even for them, you know, but that's politics, that's the way people are. But the one Barnet concept, the selling off of services, public services, and not just health services but others, they're all in that area of where they're carrying out the line of that element of politics, and it's not necessarily genuinely pragmatic or practical, because I'm ready to concede that there's a case, an argument, a strong argument, and I accept it personally, that mixed economy, and the mixed economy implies that people make their living in all sorts of ways. That means private and public and so on. But the ethos of public service is one that is required. It's an absolute requirement in society, that's my view. And for a council or a government to deliberately try to undermine that ethos, you know, by a fundamental economic fact, which is what they're doing. And Barnet's overall policy is driven by that. And that at the moment it can't be said, because it's not happening on the ground to the extent that we're moving into that situation where tendering, for instance, and bidding for work, bidding for services is taking place, but not yet have they been given. So at the grassroots, if you like, at the coalface, people are not up against the effects of privatised and market forces. They're still having the benefit of that. I've had all my life of a service which has become one of the finest public services in the world, the NHS, for instance. But that will go, and although it could be argued by the proponents of the change, that it's going because it's just another form of organisation. But all our experience of market forces produces a terrible unevenness. It aggravates, if nothing else, the inequality between the have and the have-nots. And it makes it, and in terms of running a thing, an organisation like the NHS, it increases fragmentation. And if there's one service that you can say benefits from an properly organised network of services, properly interlinked, properly, if you like, kind of the word is used, it's often used these days, holistically applied to the patient, then it must be the NHS. And anything that makes that harder can't be right.
Right.
That's nothing to do with the economics in a way, is it? It's a deliberate acceptance of something that will happen as a direct result of something being done economically, for economic reasons. That kind of market force application can only be a worsening factor. Let's put it as least. For some people, I think it will prove disastrous.
Yeah.